Imagine standing in front of a mirror, but the reflection staring back at you isn't really you. It's a distorted version, painted by someone else. You look into it and see a person full of flaws, never good enough, always needing to prove something. Have you ever felt that way? When was the last time you tried to explain yourself to someone? Your palms sweating, your heart racing, searching for the right words to convince them you're not the failure they've made you out to be? And even after all that, you walked away feeling empty, like every good part of you had been squeezed out by the sound of their voice. That wasn't just a random moment. That was a sign you've been living under the words of a narcissist. Phrases like, "You're not good enough," "This is all your fault," or "If I'm disappointed, it's because you made me feel this way." Those aren't just passing remarks. They're toxic arrows aimed straight at your self-worth, designed to trap you in a cycle of self-doubt. I've been there. I remember waking up to the weight of criticism from someone I once thought mattered. I spent hours, days even, wondering if maybe I really was the problem, just like they said. But here's the truth I need you to hear. You weren't born to live in anyone's shadow. You're not a puppet meant to dance to the tune of someone else's toxic words. What if you stopped? What if you refused to keep living the script they wrote for you and instead decided it's time to reclaim your own power? That's what I want us to explore today. In this video, we're going to walk through 3 major steps. First, we'll unmask the narcissist, understand who they are and why they need you to feel small. Next, we'll look directly at what their words have done to you, how they've kept you locked inside an invisible prison. And finally, I'll show you how to break those chains, stop living by their narrative, and rediscover your true self, a powerful, worthy person who doesn't need anyone's approval. Are you ready? Let's begin. Before we can break free, we need to understand who the narcissist really is. They're not just people who like to admire themselves in the mirror or brag about their accomplishments. No, they're more complex than that, and far more dangerous. A narcissist is someone who thrives off your downfall. Every time they cut you down, with a sharp comment, a condescending glance, or a moment that makes you question yourself, they're feeding off your energy to prop up their crumbling ego. They can't stand tall on their own. They need you to feel small so they can feel okay. Think about that for a moment. I once had someone in my life, let's call them Alex, who always found a way to make me feel like a loser. If I accomplished something, Alex would say, "Well, that's not really a big deal." If I made a mistake, they'd blow it up like it was final proof I was worthless. At first, I thought it was just brutal honesty, but then I realized something. Alex was never happy when I succeeded. They only lit up when I failed, when I apologized, when I shrank. That wasn't friendship. That wasn't love. That was manipulation. Here's what you need to see clearly. A narcissist isn't as strong as you think. They're not invincible giants standing at the top of a mountain. They're fragile, clinging to you like a lifeline. If they truly had confidence, if they had real inner strength, they wouldn't need to step on you to feel tall. The truth is, they're afraid. Afraid you'll see through them. Afraid you'll realize you never needed their validation in the first place. Tell me this, does a genuinely happy, secure person need to hurt you just to feel good? Never. So why let them define you? Ask yourself this. Who in your life only shines when you're dim? Who only smiles when you cry? Only stands tall when you're on your knees? That's the narcissist, and when you finally see that, you'll understand. They're not the ones in control of your life. They're the ones desperately trying to survive off the doubt they've planted in you, but you're not their fuel. You're not their supply. You have every right to walk away from that role, and we're going to do it together. So what have the narcissist's words actually done to you? Take a moment to look back. Maybe you've found yourself arguing with them, like a defense attorney in a courtroom that doesn't even exist, trying desperately to prove that you're not the villain they make you out to be. You reasoned, you laid out evidence, you nearly begged them to see things differently, but in the end, they just smiled. Not because you convinced them, but because they enjoy watching you squirm. They like seeing you exhausted. I've been there. I remember those long nights arguing with Alex, trying to explain why I wasn't the one to blame. But every time I spoke, Alex only dug deeper, making me feel more and more like I was the problem. Or maybe you took a different approach. You explained yourself until your voice went hoarse, repeating your side of the story, hoping that this time they'd finally understand. You walked them through your actions, your reasons, hoping they'd nod and say, "Yeah, I get it now." But instead, they stayed silent. Or worse, they twisted your words and used them against you. I remember sitting across from Alex, explaining why I needed to rest after a stressful week. Alex looked at me and said, "If you can't handle pressure, maybe you're just not cut out for life." I didn't walk away feeling heard. I walked away carrying a heavy burden of self-doubt. And then there are those who choose silence. You don't argue, you don't explain, you just retreat. You start living with the feeling that you're not enough, that everything they said about you, that you're wrong, that you're the problem, must be true. You stop dreaming big. You stop believing in yourself. You become a shadow of who you used to be. I've been there too. There were days I couldn't speak up for myself, couldn't step outside my comfort zone, because Alex's voice echoed in my head. "You'll fail anyway, so why even try?" I lived under their shadow, and I hated it. When you live by their words, you don't just lose time, you lose yourself. Every time you let them define you, you hand over control of your life's story. They turn you into a side character in their play, where they're the hero and you're the failure. But that is not your destiny. You weren't born to be the backdrop for someone else's ego. You're not a puppet for them to pull the strings. You have the right to stop, to rise, and to say, "That's enough, and I'm here to help you do exactly that." So how do you stop living by the words of a narcissist? How do you escape the spiral they've pulled you into, where every word they say feels like a chain around your self-worth, making you doubt yourself, making you feel like you need to fix yourself just to fit their mold? It's not easy, I won't lie to you about that, but it is absolutely possible. And it starts with realizing that you have more power than they ever wanted you to believe. You are not their puppet. You are not a permanent victim in the story they've written. You are the one who can rise up, cut those strings, and reclaim control over your life. I did it, and I want to walk you through each step so you can do it too, with clarity, detail, and determination. Step 1. See through their game. Those words were never really about you. To stop living by their narrative, you have to understand a simple but powerful truth. The toxic words and relentless criticism from a narcissist are not the truth about who you are. They're a mirror of their own insecurity. When they say, "You're not good enough," they're not really talking about you. They're speaking out of a deep fear that they're not good enough. When they say, "It's all your fault," they're not analyzing you. They're avoiding the reality that they don't want to face their own flaws. This is a psychological game, and you've been pulled into it without realizing it. I remember someone in my life, let's keep calling them Alex. Alex used to tell me I was the reason everything in our relationship fell apart. They'd say, "If you weren't so selfish, things would have been fine." And at the time, I believed it. I'd sit for hours blaming myself, thinking, if I just changed, if I was better, things would finally work. But then one day, I stopped and asked myself, if I was really that terrible, why didn't they just leave? Why did they stay, keep criticizing, keep blaming? And I realized they needed me to feel superior. Their words weren't the truth about me. They were their own way of hiding from their truth. And once I saw that, everything shifted. Their criticism stopped feeling like a verdict. It started sounding like a confession. You can do the same. Next time the narcissist in your life says something cruel, "You always mess everything up," or "You're not even worth my attention," pause. Don't react. Don't believe it. Ask yourself, what does this say about them? What are they trying to hide? Maybe they call you a failure to hide their own fear of failing. Maybe they say you're not worthy so they can feel more important. When you see their words through this lens, you'll realize those words are not a reflection of who you are, they're a window into their weakness. And when you see that, their power fades. They're no longer the judge in your life. They're just a desperate person trying to keep you under control. Try this today. When they say something hurtful, write it down and ask yourself, what fear of theirs does this reveal? You'll be surprised at what you uncover. Step 2. Reject the role they've cast you in. You're not their supporting character. A narcissist wants you to play a specific role in their play. They want you to be the audience, clapping for their greatness. They want you to be the scapegoat, taking the blame, absorbing all the criticism. They want you to be the loser, always apologizing, always striving to earn their approval. But you don't have to stay on that stage. You don't have to argue to prove yourself, because they don't care about the truth. They care about keeping you stuck. You don't have to explain to be understood, because they don't want understanding. They want control. Rejecting that role is one of the most powerful steps toward taking back your life. I learnt this the hard way with Alex. Every time they criticized me, I'd jump into the argument like a defense attorney. I'd explain, I'd reason, I'd try to prove I wasn't the terrible person they painted me to be. One time, Alex called me selfish for not spending enough time with them. I spent the whole evening explaining how I had work, how I needed rest, how I wasn't trying to ignore them. And at the end of it, Alex just shrugged and said, "You always have an excuse, don't you?" I walked away drained, like I'd just lost a pointless battle. And then I realized, I didn't need to win the argument. I didn't need to convince them. Every time I argued or explained, I was handing them power. The power to keep me locked in the role they assigned me. Eventually I stopped. The next time Alex tried to pull me into an argument, I simply said, "I'm not doing this anymore." They got angry, tried to provoke me, but I didn't budge. I walked away, not in anger, but in peace. And you know what happened? They panicked, because when you don't play their game, when you refuse the role they want you to play, they lose what they crave most, your energy and your attention. You can do this too. The next time they criticize you, don't argue, don't explain, just say, "I'm not engaging in this," or even better, say nothing and walk away. Try it. You'll feel your power return bit by bit. You're not a side character in their story. You're the main character in your own. Step 3, set strong boundaries. Protect your life like a fortress. Refusing their role is powerful, but to truly stop living by their words, you need boundaries. Solid, clear, unshakable boundaries. These aren't faint lines they can easily cross. These are steel walls you build to protect your peace, your time, and your worth. Say no to endless arguments. Say no to manipulation. Say no to demands that drain you just to keep them satisfied. You don't owe them explanations, not for your feelings, not for your choices, not for your identity. I remember the last time I faced Alex. They tried to drag me into another fight, this time about how I didn't respond to messages quickly enough. They said, "You don't care about anyone but yourself." In the past, I would have jumped to explain, saying I was busy, I didn't mean to ignore them, I still cared. But this time, I was different. I took a deep breath and said, "I'm not doing this. If you want to talk respectfully, I'll listen. If not, I'm leaving." Alex was stunned. They tried guilt-tripping me, blaming me, but I didn't move. I had set a boundary, not to hurt them, but to protect myself. And when I walked away, I felt lighter than I had in years, because for the first time I understood my life belongs to me, not to them. You can set boundaries like that too. It doesn't have to be a dramatic confrontation. It can be as simple as saying, "I'm not talking about this," when they start criticizing. Or "I need space. Don't contact me for a while," if they keep trying to manipulate you. If it's someone you have to see regularly, like a co-worker or a family member, limit your interaction. Keep it brief, stay neutral, and don't let them drag you into their drama. Think of boundaries like a door. You decide who's allowed in and who stays out. The people who truly love you, who truly care, will respect that door. They won't ask you to sacrifice yourself just to keep them happy. But the narcissist, they'll bang on that door, scream, try to break it down, because they can't handle losing control. Don't open it. You deserve protection. To make this real, I want you to start small but specific. Today, choose one behavior from the narcissist that you will no longer tolerate. Maybe it's the constant guilt-tripping, the endless calls, or the manipulative demands. Decide your boundary, something like, I won't respond if they start blaming, or I leave the room if they raise their voice. Write it down if you need to, as a reminder to yourself, and the next time they cross that line, act. Don't explain, don't apologize, just take action. I did this with Alex. I decided not to respond to any messages that began with criticism. The first time I ignored one, I felt guilty. The second time, I felt free. You'll be amazed at how powerful boundaries can be when you stand by them. Today, I want you to do one more thing. Pick one sentence the narcissist has said to you, something you've allowed to shape your identity for too long, and let it go. Maybe it's, you're never good enough, or you're the reason I'm miserable. Write it down, look at it one last time, then tear it up, burn it if you want to, do whatever you need to do to tell yourself, I'm not a prisoner of this anymore. I did this myself. I wrote down the sentence Alex once said, you'll never be successful. I tore it into tiny pieces, and as each piece fell, I felt part of myself being freed. You're taking your power back, step by step. You don't have to do it all at once, but you have to start. Because with every step, you're getting closer to living your life, not theirs. The narcissist wants you to believe you can't break free, that you need them, that you're weak, but they're wrong. You're stronger than you think. Every time you see through their game, every time you reject their role, every time you build a boundary, you're proving it. I stopped living by Alex's words, and I found a peace I never thought was possible. You can too. Start today. Cut one of their strings and feel your strength return. You deserve it, and no one can stop you unless you let them. When you begin breaking free from the narcissist's words, when you stop letting them define you, that's when the real journey begins. Rediscovering yourself. This isn't some grand dramatic transformation into a flawless version of who society or the narcissist told you you should be. No, this is a gentler but far more powerful process. It's about peeling away the layers they painted on you, layers of doubt, shame, fear, to reveal who you truly are. Strong, worthy, and free. You don't need their validation to know that. You never did. But sometimes we forget that truth. We let their words dim the light inside us, turning us into a shadow of who we used to be. Today, we change that, step by step, with clarity and determination. I want you to imagine this. Think of yourself as a beautiful painting, created from the moment you were born, full of color, full of life, full of meaning. Then the narcissist comes along, grabs a rough paintbrush and starts smearing gray strokes all over it. Strokes labeled, you're not good enough, you're the problem, you don't deserve anything. And for a long time you looked at that painting and believed that's who you were. I've been there. I had someone in my life, Alex, who made me believe I was a failed painting, a mess beyond repair. But then I realized, those brushstrokes weren't me, they were Alex's reflection, not mine. And I had every right to wipe them away, to uncover the masterpiece beneath. So how do you do that? How do you find yourself again after being trapped in their narrative for so long? It starts by anchoring yourself in core principles, truths that no narcissist can take from you no matter how hard they try. Let's go through each one clearly and in detail, so you don't just understand them, you feel their power. Principle 1. You have worth, no one needs to grant it to you. Your worth does not lie in a narcissist's hands. It isn't dependent on whether they approve of you or not. It's a part of you, like the breath in your lungs, the beat of your heart. But narcissists want you to believe the opposite. They want you to think your worth has to be earned, by pleasing them, by meeting their expectations. I fell into that trap too. Alex used to tell me I only had value when I stayed quiet, when I agreed, when I didn't challenge them. I believed it for a long time, thinking if Alex didn't see my worth, then maybe I didn't have any. But then one day I asked myself, why did I give them that power? My worth isn't a gift they can grant. It's a truth I already own. and so do you. Take a moment right now. Think about something you've done in life that makes you proud. Maybe it was helping a friend, surviving a tough day, or simply getting out of bed when everything felt heavy. That's your proof. You have worth no matter what they say. Principle 2. You don't need their approval to live a good life. A narcissist wants you to believe your life only matters if they approve. If they nod and say you're okay. They set distorted standards. You must be perfect. You must please them. And if you fall short, you're a failure. But here's the truth. You don't have to jump through their hoops to be worthy. I used to do everything for Alex's approval. Working long hours, agreeing with everything they said, even giving up hobbies they called pointless. But it was never enough. Once I shared a project I was passionate about and Alex laughed. "You really think you can do that? Stop dreaming." It felt like a punch in the chest. I nearly gave up. But then I realized their approval isn't the key to my happiness. I don't need them to live well. I only need myself. And so do you. Think of one thing you love. A hobby, a dream, a moment that brings you joy. You don't need anyone's permission to pursue it. Start today. Do one small thing you love just because you want to, not to prove anything, just because it matters to you. Principle 3. Mistakes don't make you small, they help you grow. Narcissists love to weaponize your mistakes. They magnify every slip-up, every stumble, making you believe it's proof you're never good enough. But that's a lie. Mistakes aren't the end. They're stepping stones. They're bricks that build who you're becoming. I remember failing a big project. I worked tirelessly, but everything fell apart. And Alex was quick to pounce. "See, I told you, you're not capable. This proves it." I believed them. I thought I was a loser, but then I looked again. I realized that failure taught me how to do better. I tried again, and I succeeded. Alex had nothing to say then. But I didn't need their praise. I had already grown. You've had those moments too. Think of a time you fell. Maybe it was an argument you lost, an opportunity you missed. What did you learn? How did you rise again? That's your strength, not your weakness. Don't let them convince you otherwise. Principle 4. Your life has meaning not to please them, but to fulfill you. The purpose of your life is not to serve a narcissist's ego. It's not to sacrifice your dreams, your feelings, or your soul so they feel important. Your meaning is in living authentically, in bringing something good to this world, however big or small. I used to believe my purpose was to keep Alex happy. I put their needs above my own, thinking if they were okay, I would be okay. But each time I did that, I felt emptier. Then one day I started writing again, something I'd loved since childhood but had abandoned because Alex called it useless. I began helping others through my stories, and for the first time, life felt meaningful, not because of Alex, but because of me. You have your own meaning. Think about what makes you feel alive. Art, family, work, a peaceful morning with coffee. That's your meaning. Don't let them make you forget it. Do one small thing today that connects you to that meaning. Not to prove anything, just to remind yourself that your life matters. Principle 5. No one gets to define you, only you do. This is the most powerful truth of all. A narcissist wants you to believe they hold the pen in your story, that they get to write who you are, a failure, someone not good enough, someone who needs them to exist. But they don't get that power, only you do. Alex tried to define me too, as someone who would never be enough, someone who'd fail without them. I believed it for far too long, until I almost forgot who I really was. But then I took the pen back. I started rewriting my story, a story of strength, resilience, and inner worth that no one can take away. I remember the day I finally stood up to Alex. They tried to belittle me again, but I simply said, "You don't get to define me anymore," and I walked away. You have that pen in your hand too. Think about how you want to define yourself. Strong, creative, kind, resilient. Write it down today. Keep it somewhere visible. That's who you are, not the version they tried to make you believe. To truly rediscover yourself, you need to practice these principles every day. I did, and it changed me. Every morning, I'd look in the mirror and tell myself, "You are worthy. You don't need anyone's approval. You'll grow through everything." At first, it felt awkward, like I was lying to myself, but then it became my truth. I started doing what I loved, writing, connecting with others, not to prove anything to Alex, but to live in alignment. And day by day, I felt lighter. I felt free. You can do it too. Start small. Each day, remind yourself of one thing you love about who you are. Say it out loud if you have to. Let your voice drown out their noise. Maybe it's, "I'm strong because I've survived this," or "I'm worthy just as I am." Repeat it until you believe it. Do you know what a narcissist fears the most? You. When you stand tall, live authentically, and no longer need them. They fear you realizing that you're not their tool, not their victim. They fear you becoming their worst nightmare, a confident, free, and untouchable person. That's your power. I became Alex's worst nightmare when I stopped living by their words and started living for myself. You can too. Start today. Wipe away one of the brush strokes they painted over you and let your true self shine through. You're stronger than you think, and the world is waiting for you. Not the version they tried to create, but the real you. We've come a long way together today. We started by being trapped in the toxic words of a narcissist, words that made you doubt yourself, made you feel small. We pulled off their mask and saw them clearly, not as giants, but as fragile people who survive by tearing you down. We looked closely at what their words have done to you, how they dragged you into the dark and made you forget your worth. And then we found the way out. By rejecting the roles they cast on you, setting boundaries, and rebuilding the real you from the inside out. You are not a tool for a narcissist to feel powerful. You are not a victim in their story. You are the author of your own story, and it's time to pick up the pen. I did it. After walking away from Alex, I didn't just survive, I thrived. I found my voice again, my passion again, and I never looked back. And you can do it too. You are stronger than you think, and the world needs the real you, not the version the narcissist tried to mold you into. If you found value in this journey, make sure to hit subscribe so we can keep growing together. I'd love to hear from you. Leave a comment below. What is one toxic sentence you're choosing to stop believing today? One phrase you're ready to let go so you can take yourself back. Live like the narcissist's worst nightmare. Confident, free, and unapologetically you. You don't just deserve that life. You were born for it. No one can take that from you unless you let them. And I believe in you. I believe you have the strength to rise, to reclaim yourself, and to live a life the narcissist will never be able to touch. I'll see you in the next video. Start today.